So, kicking it off, we want to thank our hosts, Luft. We want to thank MSO Mythical State of and Rabbit Wolf for the three of them putting together, their minds and their bodies and putting it all on the line for this event. So I know it's probably not the right order to clap up front, but if you want to clap for those people right now. Awesome. So we have some great sponsors, Morton, CLA, and Norda.
More memorable than
So, we'd like to welcome you here tonight. As you know, there's a route in the woods that we're hoping that you all run, or walk, or make it through. To kind of inspire you to do this route even more, we have three celebrities with us tonight. We have Stephen Kersh, celebrity runner. We have Abby Corden, celebrity runner. And we have Moi Medina, celebrity historian and fantastic amateur runner. And let's ask the question, where do we think the drive to run came from? Does anybody know? Anybody have any thoughts on where the drive to run came from? Hands up. Anybody in a hat with the hand up? Anybody think, oh, that's where running came from, that's why humans run? Maybe they read the book Born to Run, or they have an idea. No one? Well, let's just assume that the popular myth is that people run because they have to chase animals down, right? We have to hunt them. But if you really think about it, and I'll do it abbreviated, I think that we run because we're scared. Because little primates have to hop down the tree that they're on, and they go down for their favorite nut or whatever they dropped, and there's a wolf or some sort of predator there, and that's the first time in our mammalian history we started running, and we've been running scared ever since. And for that reason, running is absurd, because there is, if you're scared all the time and you have to go run, what's the drive? What's the connection? So, over to you guys. Abby, you are a runner, and you've had some interesting experiences out running, and I was told to ask you about that, maybe in the Death Valley general region.
Yeah.
Can you speak to interesting, absurd experience running in Death Valley?
Well, I've had a number of interesting running experiences in Death Valley, some in the form of fun day trips, and then some that I've done with my husband Cordis here in the front row on the overnight and long kind of scale variety. It's a pretty special place. I am I used to live out here in LA and started venturing further and further up into the Sierra, and it's always a special time up there.
Oh, yeah. So I'm supposed to ask you to give your own talk for a second, and let's say let's say that at some point you maybe had an experience celestial of some type.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Could you just kind of give us a tip to tail on that? Just kind of walk us through. You're out running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that particular experience was on the John Muir Trail. Anyone here familiar with John Muir Trail up in the Sierra here? Goes from Mount Whitney to Yosemite Valley through the most insane stretch of terrain in the U.S. I think it's really special. So I went for the fastest known time on the John Muir Trail. Missed it by 6 hours. Spoiler alert. But it's a really big thing to do unsupported, which is the style I did it in, because you are carrying all your stuff with you. And in the case of the restrictions in that area, you're bringing a bear can, and it's a pretty heavy pack you're setting out there with. And I had 4 consecutive overnights on the trail. So I realized that that's a noteworthy asterisk going into this story
100%.
Because the story for me happened on night 4, which you might think, this is how reliable is this here? But
because how much were you sleeping?
I was sleeping about 90 minutes a night or so.
Ooh,
So at this
that's
point
enough.
we're working on
Yeah.
It's so things are starting to get a little bit fuzzy, but this was a really weird experience. I'm going into my 4th overnight and I see another light ahead of me and I'm like, oh, finally, maybe another headlamp on the trail. It's end of the summer, there's lots of PCTers, and I was maybe on a full moon there's some other hiker who's wanting to be opportunistic with the light and enjoying it, and oh, maybe I'm about to see someone. It's 1 a.m. I should have known. You're not seeing anyone out there right now. And then I see like this light start to like move above the ridgeline. Like it looked like it was a close enough light that I was seeing it on the trail ahead of me, but instead it's like starting to move up into the air. And like this light, as I was crossing over Donahue Pass, like into like crossing officially into Yosemite, like basically just hovered above me in this basin from like 2 to 6 a.m. And it was just like, it would kind of go up and, and it would kind of like bob in the sky. And sometimes it would go way up, and then sometimes it would come like really close to me, like in this kind of like little basin that I was in. And it was such a surreal experience. I just like remember pausing and being like, okay, I know I'm a little out of my mind right now, but I've got to like take this in. So I judged by like a boulder to see like that the light was indeed moving on its own, not just like me, like, you know, not perceiving things correctly. So it was a pretty crazy experience. I was very glad to have daylight come and realize that I hadn't gotten abducted. I did go back and check the GPX data just to make sure that there wasn't some like weird unaccounted for time, because I was like, you know what, I'm at home watching Netflix and there's like some alien abduction thing. I'm like, yep, 100%, like I believe you to a T, and here I am. I'm like, okay, if I actually believe this stuff and I'm out here, this could be real.
Sure. But it was?
No,
No,
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Blink twice if you're real.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here.
Yeah, okay, so
They're talking.
How many miles were you averaging here?
I was about like, I think like 55 miles a day or so, with maybe 10 or 12,000 feet of climbing per day, with like a 20-pound pack. It was hard.
Did you, so looking at the GPX and the timing, is that where the 6 hours went? Like, I wonder if like, did you
No.
time travel a little bit? in
No,
that space?
right? Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't. It was really weird too, because then like that morning I ran into someone that I knew who happened to be out there, and I just started like word vomiting all this that had just happened. I think it started to solidify the case that like I was just crazy. So I didn't do myself any favors by being this like crazed like you know, dirty mountain person with like ranting about what I saw on my 4th overnight in the wild.
That's incredible. Did it light your way in any way? Did you feel like it was a
No.
beacon, or you were just like, it was annoying?
No, I felt like I was being observed.
Uh-huh.
I felt like they were like, this is where it gets psychological, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is this person out here doing?
Uh-huh.
Which, you know, maybe kind of like alludes a little bit to like what we're talking about tonight.
For aliens to be asking
Why
the
are we
question,
out
right?
here doing this stuff under a full moon? Yeah.
Is that okay?
Totally.
Awesome. Okay, so when we arrive at the end of the GMT, you've seen your friend, your word vomiting. Like, do you think that was the only time you were observed? Is there more absurdity that's happened for you out running, or is that like peak?
I mean, there's definitely more absurdity.
Yeah.
I think that might have been the most otherworldly, but I've got some other stories that I'd love to share.
Yeah, regale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I wrote out some thoughts because I didn't want to miss a thing, and I'm a better writer than I am talker, I think. So this will help me like.
Somebody's
Yeah,
telling
pronounce
us
my
something.
words.
Also, if anybody knows Morse code, and if that is like a
That is-
message.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
They're like, switch the subject
Yeah,
now.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
so,
got
so,
eyes
so.
on you. Okay, so picture this. I'm at around 13,000 feet, just below a mountain in the Rockies called Ogallala Peak. The year is 2016, and I ran my second ever ultra marathon the weekend before, and was so excited I decided to immediately head out the next weekend with my new boyfriend, now husband, Cordis, for a route we read about on the internet. How all good things start, right? Maybe even why some of us are here. We're about 40 miles deep, and each mile is somehow slower than the last one. This one now being by far the slowest, because I'm walking across a talus field. That is a field of enormous boulders that creak and tip and rock back and forth as you walk and hop from rock to rock. There's a gorgeous sunset, a painfully gorgeous sunset, because we know what that means. We're about to be benighted. My favorite word, by the way. I yell into the wind, honestly not being facetious, but more like I was on a game show ready to tell the producers I wanted out. I yelled to Cordis, I think I'm ready to be done now. He turns around, almost entertained, and goes, look, you know we're at least 20 miles from a trailhead, right? Like, and to be clear, we're not talking about 20 miles of buttery single track or even trail for that matter. We're talking 20 miles of off-trail route finding in the high Rockies with big rocks and ridges and drops when you're above tree line and nasty bushwhacking when you're below tree line. Cordis pauses and quietly, silently gives me his extra pants, his jacket, all of his remaining water, and our final bit of food, a Ziploc bag of gummy candies. That's when the fun really started. So from there, the next 12 hours or so are a bit of a blur, but here's what I do remember. I remember descending down a ridge so steep, I was glad it was dark so I couldn't see anything to make myself physically dizzy. I remember vividly seeing the outline of a person in a cloak with a sickle, blown up huge on this like sheer face of a peak, kind of like what someone would do with like a projector from Party City on Halloween on the side of their house. But here's one. I remember staring down at the lights of Boulder from way up high and thinking, this is really cool. And it was something about like this feeling of being where I wasn't supposed to be. You know, I'm supposed to be in bed. I'm supposed to be down there where those lights are, participating in a system designed to keep us occupied 24 hours a day with a predetermined set of tasks, breakfast, work, lunch, a jog, dinner, 8 hours of sleep. And here I am, in a puffy coat and some borrowed wind pants, not quite lost in the mountains, but not exactly sure where I am either. Around sunrise the next morning, we're finally met by the nicest man ever, the guy who created the route, actually, Guy Cordis knew. He heard we were out there, waited for us all night in the parking lot, and slept on a cot, there to receive us as we came stumbling into the parking lot. Getting back into the car, getting home, getting back to work the next morning, all I remember is fun. And I think there's a certain arc or trajectory with experiences like this. I'll call them Misery PRs. So this was my first Misery PR, and you know, I'm certain there are more basic ones that came before this, like when I ran out of water trying to do Mount Whitney for the first time and called 911 because I got lost. But honestly, those ones feel pretty tame and less memorable in hindsight. I think the more Misery PRs you set, the greater your tolerance becomes, like many things in life. I just recently learned about this part of our brains called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. Anyone? Yep. And I learned this part of our brains literally gets bigger when we do things that we don't want to do. So it could be as simple as getting into cold water when you really don't want to, or maybe taking 12 hours to bail from a route. But here's the thing, when we start loving it and enjoying it, that part of our brains doesn't develop. Other parts of our brain probably do. But we have to not like it, so we have to be suffering in a sense. The research that I read about it describes that part of our brain as the part that, quote, predicts energy requirements that are needed for attention allocation and physical movement, all in the service of goal attainment. So put simply, it helps us do the things that we need to do to meet our goal, regardless of whether they're fun or pleasant or not. I'm no doctor or neuroscientist. In fact, I'm a graphic designer turned professional runner. But I think this part of my brain, or part of the brain, explains how I'm wired the best. In the last 8 years, I went from living here in LA to going to the mountains more, to loving the mountains so much that I moved to be near them, to signing up for a bunch of ultras, signing my first pro contract, quitting my design job, and now I'm in a place like this, here tonight, to talk about things like dumb routes. Life is crazy. I could talk to you guys about like pro ultra running and racing and stuff, but I'm a huge believer that like my success at those things has come from stories like the one I just told you. The moments where no one cared if I kept going or not, but I did. So one of my favorite categories of dumb routes is geographical ones, like partially like what a lot of people here are going to do tomorrow. And, you know, like pointing at some distant thing and being like, I'm going to go there. I don't care what it takes. So like, you know, Cordis and I do a lot of ones like this. Like, for example, you know, a few weeks ago in Arizona, there's this like white FAA tower antenna thing. It's like basically like a white ball on top of a mountain. And we like structured a whole day around like riding our bikes there and being like, we're going to the big white ball. Or I did this once like when we lived in Boulder. I was like, I just want to like tag those peaks from here at home on my doorstep. And no one really cares. It's not like there's a fastest time from my doorstep to this peak, but I cared. And I love knowing like that I'm capable of that kind of thing. So there's a route in Southern California, we were talking about Death Valley earlier, called Lowest to Highest. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. So it uniquely connects the lowest and highest points here in the continental U.S., Badwater Basin and Mount Whitney. So, you know, of course, some of you might even know in detail, there's like a highway you could drive in between connecting those 2 points if you've ever been out to Badwater Basin. But there's, you know, of course, a bunch of great dumb people like ourselves that are here tonight that are interested in connecting these points in some more off the beaten pathways. So The lowest to highest, as I'm describing it here, is the one where you're kind of taking more of an off-trail approach, crossing deserts and big mountain ranges to complete the route. It's an absolutely brutal route, really not often attempted and even more rarely finished. Last year, Cordis and I spent our Thanksgiving weekend attempting lowest to highest, and we spent the day before caching water across these remote locations. Without that, the route's pretty much impossible. We had a local man listed in my phone contacts now as Lone Pine Kurt drive us to the start at Badwater Basin. He was on his way to a CB radio contest in Arizona. That doesn't really have to do with the story, but I just thought that was fascinating. So he's one of those drivers, Kurt, that he loved to tell you stories with his head fully turned around, making eye contact with you while he's driving. And we're on the way to the start. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And as we're listening to his literal war stories, we're jolted awake to Kurt swerving off the road in Death Valley. The car fishtails. He narrowly pulls us out of it. He used to be a military pilot, so despite almost killing us, he's also really good at getting people out of life-endangering situations. I remember thinking to myself, we are going to die before we even make it to the start of this thing. But we make it there. And he snaps a photo of us at the edge of Badwater Basin and waves goodbye. And after about the first 2 miles of this 135-mile route, every aspect of this route requires you to be pulling from some deeper source. What begins as salt flats turn into big, hard ribs of salt that require this kind of high knee walking to get over it. And then it gets wet, almost like sinking sand. And even though we've packed ultralight, it still requires carrying about a gallon of water in between caches and food for multiple days, sleeping bags, you get the idea. The first climb goes up Telescope Peak, which is actually when you're doing it from the Badwater Basin side, it's a 12,000-foot continuous climb in about 14 miles. There aren't many settings in the world where you get a peak prominent enough to do that kind of sustained climbing. Beginning below sea level, you first ascend high enough where like basic life can maintain itself, just like tiny dry plants. Then you're reaching sagebrush and prickly pears, then comes juniper and pine. And you finally pass tree line, and then you get the bristlecone pines. There was recent snow, which meant as we got higher, it got painfully slow. Like each step just busting through windblown crust. The final mile to gain the ridge had about 1,800 feet of climbing. There's no trail even on a dry day. So here we are, just thrashing up this steep, snowy face with heavy packs. And I just remember, like, when we gained the ridge, the sun was perfectly setting, finally giving us this westward view. Everything's golden, and it's classic Misery PR, right? Like in this one period of 5 minutes, you go from desperately miserable to absolutely elated. The memory of the endless, snowy, messy climb is immediately like erased and written over by witnessing this golden light and sitting there and pounding some Oreos. Like, what exactly is it that wills us up something like this? Why is it that every time I set a Misery PR, I get even more excited for the next one? And the contrast with my first story, this time I'm not surprised when the sun sets and we thrash down an equally steep and miserable descent to what we came up. It doesn't surprise me like it used to. I know I did it once and I know I can do it again. Fast forward to the next sunset 24 hours later, and Cordis's ankle is starting to hurt really badly. We're in the middle of nowhere. He's doing what I did in the first story where I said, hey, I think I'm ready to be done now, except this time I'm the one in charge. So I'm doing the misery calculus. He probably had to do the first time. I told him this. Okay, so he truly can't go any further. It would take me about 8 hours of hiking to get back to the highway crossing, like hitchhike from there down to Lone Pine, hike up to Kurt's cabin where the van's parked, drive back out here. Probably looking at 12 hours. I encourage him to, quote, give it a chance. We stop for a power nap. I make him eat some food and lay in child's pose. That'll fix it, right? I tell him all we need to do is get over the Inyos. I'm making it sound small, but it's 38 miles and about 7,000 feet of climbing, and maybe even worse, 7,000 feet of descending, left to get to Owens Valley before we could try and get a ride back to the car. Another highly complex bail. In a situation like this, my own problems have to take the backseat to that of my partner. My body decided to surprise me by starting my period. I was unprepared. I'll leave it at that. Cordis goes quiet. I keep us entertained with music from my iPhone. Don't at me. We haven't seen humans in like 10 hours. But there's an energy shift that happens when you're with a partner like this and you're suffering. You kind of have to like become strong for them without realizing it. I mean, this happens like in daily life too. But it's not without my noticing that Cordis's condition is seriously deteriorating. By sunrise, he's at a full-on limp. I'm feeling good, eager to try and get the Whitney summit. But I remember, what we start together, we finish together. We safely get down to Owens Valley, the same valley our van's parked in. We call Lone Pine Kurt's buddy Lone Pine John, because Lone Pine Kurt is still at his CB radio competition. John picks us up in our matching coats, absolutely trashed, 56 hours since we last sat in a stranger's vehicle. In some ways, you could say it was a failure. We didn't even connect the 2 points that gave this route its shape and semblance of some sort of meaning. But it was easy to remember. The point wasn't the thing itself. The point was everything in between. The point was all the hours Cordis and I got to share out there, talking, getting loopy together, keeping each other awake, taking desperate, glorious naps, getting a beloved cup of coffee at a gas station we came across, Cordis taking reprieve from his ankle pain by laying in an open mining shack that no longer had walls as the sun rose over the Sierra. These are the moments I live for. These are the moments where I don't want to be down in town where the lights are. I want to be messing around on the fringe, setting new Misery PRs. I love Misery PRs. So you could say in some ways the point is pointlessness. The point isn't that this stuff has inherent meaning. The point is that we create meaning. We give it meaning. We make our lives meaningful with whatever we want to fill it with. So I hope this weekend you all get to experience some pointlessness, and that when you zoom out, all you remember is that you enjoyed it and made some memories.
Awesome. That was so great.
Thank you.
Thanks
for listening.
Yeah, fantastic. Next up, celebrity runner Stephen Kersh.
Celebrity. I did not write everything down. I probably should have. But today, I'm going to tell you guys about the time I got stuck in the Grand Canyon. So unfortunately for me and my friends, most of my friends were professional trail runners. So this means that unfortunately we have to do some pretty miserable things to get ready for a lot of these events that we do. And the thing that we love the most are these 100-mile races. And specifically, we love this race called Western States. So for those of you that don't know, Western States is a 100-mile race. It takes place in this great state of California. Starts in Olympic Valley, ends in Auburn. It's probably the most famous, if not the most famous 100-mile race in the world, and definitely one of the most competitive. And it's known for being very fast, but also for being very, very hot. So you need to train in preparation for that, being in really hot places. And so for the past 8 years, I've lived in Flagstaff, Arizona, and the hottest place that we can get to that preps our bodies for this is the Grand Canyon. And yeah, the Grand Canyon has tried to kill me a few times, but it hasn't. I'm here with you guys today. So yeah, me and my buddies, we spend a lot of time in the Grand Canyon. We have loops that we know like the back of our hand. We know where we're going to take a split from a certain funny looking rock to another tree, and like, okay, I'm on it today, right? Or I'm having a really bad day. So it quickly became like a testing ground, but also a training ground. One time we were all running in there, and this guy yelled at us, It's a cathedral, boys, not a gymnasium. And to his credit, it is a cathedral. Like the Grand Canyon is beautiful. It really demands respect. You descend 5,000 feet down to the Colorado River, and you're exposed to 2 billion years of rock. You're laying eyes on the power of water. The colors in there are just magnificent. And so, while he was a crotchety old white guy, he probably had a point. It is a cathedral. The main friends that I do all this stuff with, Eric, Jared, and then Tim. And Tim is he's kind of the warden of the Grand Canyon. He's the one that probably treats it the most like a cathedral. He's been known to leave Flagstaff for the evening just to go catch a sunset at the Grand Canyon and drive home. That's about 3 hours of driving for about 3 minutes of, hey Sarah, for about 3 minutes of a sunset. But he's that kind of guy, and that'll come in handy later. So anyways, this story really kicks off, it was May 26th, 2021, and me, Jared, and Eric were starting rim to rim to rim, which is a 42-mile route in the Grand Canyon. You start on South Kaibab, North Kaibab, and you turn around. So it's about 42 miles, 12,000 feet of vertical gain and descending. And we were doing this on May 26th because it was our last big training run before Western States, and we picked a damn hot day to do it. It was going to be over 100 degrees at the bottom of the canyon, which unfortunately is exactly what we wanted. Another thing to know about me is I don't do very well in the heat. I can probably count on two hands the number of times during a really long training run or a race that has been even sort of hot. I'll finish it, and within 20 minutes, I am puking. And I really don't stop puking for probably 6 to 8 hours. I can't drink anything. I can't eat anything. It's truly miserable. And even with these consequences that I am almost always certain will happen, I keep doing this shit. And my friends know it, so I'm not putting them in any sort of situation. They're aware of what might happen. But anyways, so that's kind of a seed in the back of my mind. I know that this is a possibility. So we start our run. We're descending. Just to go over some quick geography, it's about a 7-mile descent on South Kaibab to the Colorado River, which should be fun, right? Nice, flowy, easy miles. And I just remember feeling so bad, and it was scary because it was man, if this feels bad, you're in for a whole lot of worse shit ahead of you. And I could barely eat. I couldn't really drink even. I just felt super nauseous. But like Abby said, it's gonna get better. These are the things we tell ourselves. So once you get to the Colorado River, you have 7 miles through a box canyon, which on that day, like I said, it's over 100 degrees, and it's just baking. Radiated heat. It's all very stuffy down there. There's no shade. So you have 7 miles on that, and then you climb out to the North Rim. So we get to the North Rim, and I probably haven't had anything to eat in a couple hours, drinking a little bit, and I just felt, miserable. But my car was 21 miles as the crow flies across the canyon. We had to get back. Another funny story about a crotchety white guy. He was asking us what we were doing that day, and we told him, oh, we're doing rim to rim to rim, and he just said, no, you're not. That's impossible. You can't do that in one day. Which, to his credit, most people, it takes them 2 to 3 days, I'd say, generally, is a backpacking to do rim to rim, and we were doing it, it usually takes us around 7 to 8 hours. So, again, maybe these guys have points. I don't know. So, anyways, we got to get back to the South Rim, start retracing our footsteps. Not feeling any better. It's not, I'm still not taking anything in. It's really nice when you're running through the Grand Canyon because there's a creek along the trail, so you can jump in there, cool off. But on that particular day, you jump in, you get out, and you're immediately dry. It's very frightening how quickly you dry up down there. So we make it back to the Colorado River. All we have left is this 5,000-foot climb, 6 miles up South Kaibab. I tell Eric and Jared, I say, boys, you take the key. This is going to take me a while, but I promise you I will get out. But, go get some snacks or something. This might take me 2 or 3 hours. So they're, okay. Immediately, you pretty much lose sight of them immediately. There's switchbacks, and I said, I don't see anyone.
Can you, they just bounced?
Listen,
You said
not advisable.
Wait. You did the go on. I'm fine.
It was
I'm
on me.
fine.
I probably should have been more insistent on how bad I felt. Because I should probably preface that with that's not a thing. Don't split up. Don't do it.
The world tells. It's the only thing about survival that I know.
I think the thing though that our little group does a lot is we tend to make the absurd very normalized, and we've done that climb 50 times, and someone's always lagging off the back, so they're probably just thinking Steve's having a bad day, but he'll get there because no one's ever slept in the middle of the Grand Canyon. So anyways, they're gone, poof, and it got very scary very quickly because on that trail there's no water, and on a day that's 90 to 100 degrees, no one in their right mind is using that Kaibab trail, so I didn't see a soul. And then my worst fear started happening. I started to puke, which, like I said, usually happens when I'm done. But I knew the consequences, and it's like I get very lethargic. I truly feel like I'm losing my mind, like I have no energy. So yeah, like I said, things got very scary. You know, at one point I was literally like crawling up the trail, and there's no shade, but I would just try to get under like a little rock. And the one thing I knew was at tip-off point, which is 2 miles up the trail, there's like a little shelter with an emergency phone. I was like, okay, let's just get up there. So for context, usually that takes maybe 25 minutes, and it took me over 2 hours to get there that day. But I did it. I got up there. It was very dark. Not literally, because the sun was out. It was dark for me. And I get in there, and I'm just staring at this phone. And all I can think about is I just can't afford a heli evac. Like I can't pick up the phone because that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna definitely send a helicopter for me. And you know, for probably like 30 minutes, I'm kind of like, you know, I probably puked a few more times or whatever. And then I'm just looking at this phone. Finally, I pick it up. I'm like, hey, you know, it goes to search and rescue. And I'm like, hey, I'm down here. I'm not having a very good time. They're like, oh yeah, you a white male about 6 feet tall? As someone who is firmly 5'11", yes, that is me. You know, and they're like, oh, your friends called about you. You know, they waited for me for 90 minutes at tip-off point, which, you know, even now I give them a lot of shit for doing what they did, but it's fine. They waited. So I was like, yeah, well, I don't know what to do, Shane. That was his name. So we ended up kind of talking for a while. He was just like, man, you just gotta try to eat or drink something. And I was like, everything I have tastes bad. I don't want anything I have. But where I was, there's like this thing called a cache. And he gave me the code to this cache. He's like, there's water, there's food in there, and there's actually a sleeping bag and a pad. So I was like, okay, I'll go check this out. It was probably 20 yards away, and it was so hard to get to. Not like literally it was flat, but like I was like crawling over there. I get the sleeping bag, the pad out. There's like some water, but it's hot, obviously, and there's like pretzels, you know, nice salty snacks. None of it's taking. So I finally call Shane. You know, he still hasn't offered me fucking helicopter. And you know, and I was like, hey man, like I still don't know what to do. And at this point, he had been in contact with my mom, my dad, my brother, and my girlfriend, now my wife. And so I scared the shit out of everyone I loved, basically, which is a crazy feeling to be so disconnected from that, because I didn't have my phone, had nothing, and they're, you know, way out, you know, 5,000 feet above me or whatever. So finally we decide, I think I'm just going to spend the night. So actually turned out to be a beautiful night. It was a full moon. You know, it was warm, but it was like you could do that thing where you had like a leg out of the sleeping bag. It was beautiful. But during all this time, I was thinking about Tim, you know, my friend that loves the Grand Canyon. All I could think about was like, man, he would be eating this shit up. And some time passes. I see a headlamp bobbing down the trail. I'm kind of thinking, you know, I was like, oh, I haven't seen anyone. That's cool. And they're kind of trying, like, coming towards me. And I'm like, hey, the entrance to this thing is over here. And I just hear, hey, Steve. And it was Tim. He had come. He had a backpack full of chicken noodle soup and Gatorade and cold water. He met up with my wife, who gave him, like, a change of clothes. And he backpacked down to me. And that was the first annual rim trim to Tim. So we spent a little bit talking. You know, I apologized. He said I didn't need to apologize, which is literally true. I mean, he was happy to do that. That's what he lives for. And yeah, we spent the night down there. Woke up around 5 in the called search and rescue, told them we're on our way out. And then, you know, we're hiking out. Beautiful sunrise. It was a very obviously memorable day. But just gorgeous sunrise that morning. And then we're about a mile from the top, and Emma is up there. She's walking towards me, and I'm just smiling so big. And I think she was kind of pissed, obviously, because I'd put her through a lot. And I asked her about this recently. I was kind of thinking about this. I was like, why did you kind of look at me like that? Because it was almost like a perplexed look. And she's like, well, they said that you were stuck and you didn't look stuck. Like, you look like a pig in shit. And I was like, yeah, I was having a nice time. But I got out, I survived. And I think, usually I've done that before. I've gotten myself in bad situations, the outdoors, but like, I've always been able to just kind of figure it out by myself. This time it took like a whole group of people to untangle me from me. And I think that was the support, the love that I saw throughout that day through so many different people. Shane, Tim, my parents, Emma, Jared and Eric a little bit, I guess. It was just really cool. And I think for as scary as a situation as that was, I can look back on it very fondly. Just very appreciative of the people that helped me from me. So yeah, that's the time I got stuck.
Great story, Steve.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah,
happy
glad
to
you're
tell
here.
it.
Have
Yeah.
you done that since?
Yes, I have done it since.
Survive.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so
Much more chill.
Steve did it much more chill, just in case anybody missed that over the hubbub.
Yeah.
We'll get back to it. We're gonna have a multimedia presentation by amateur runner but celebrity historian Moi Medina.
Hey everyone, so my thing's going to be a little a little bit unorthodox in that it's going to be a little bit of a lecture, a little bit of history, a little bit of politics, waxing poetic, a little philosophy, a little of kind of taking a temperature of the zeitgeist of the present, on present absurdity. Both present, what's going on with absurdity in America today, but also presence absurdity. I don't know if that's working. I was thinking it'd be funny, like a present thing. What do you think?
Oh, I got it. Yeah. No, it is funny.
I mean, it took you a while to get it. I don't
It's
think
an
they got it.
internal funny.
Yeah,
It's an
okay.
internal laugh.
So yeah, I don't know who's running the computer, but if maybe Casey, are you running it? Casey. Yeah. Bless you. Everyone say hi to Casey. Hi, Casey.
Thank
Hi,
you,
Casey.
Casey.
Yeah, Casey's rad. So maybe when I tap my hat, maybe you switch over.
Is that a forward? Move it forward or what? Backwards.
Forwards, backwards?
Forward. Wait,
Yeah.
tap it and move the frame forward. But what if you want to go back?
I hope that's something's going wrong if I go back.
Got it.
This is since we're in a bike shop, a little bit is going to be like cycling absurdity, a little bit is going to be running absurdity. I'm also a runner, and then a little bit is going to be like rock climbing absurdity, or in some cases all three. I think I'll get to that part. This is a photo of me after doing the southern loop of the Baja Divide, where there are 17 different ways that you can push a bike. And I found 15 of them on that route. So I guess I'll just get started. And I'm going to try to read it. I just wrote this a couple of days ago, so my apologies. I've rehearsed it a couple of times. Let's see how it goes. An athletic endeavor can be absurd from its inception, its scope, distance, and time proposed. Its means, the method by which one occupies new territory, and even in the inspiration that birthed the idea into the world. From the beginning, a farce. But a reasonable pursuit, is that working?
Yeah.
There's a bicycle over there, I don't know if you see it.
Yeah, I see.
But a reasonable pursuit, calculated, measured, intention, through no fault of one's own, can be abandoned and achieve the absurd. The most apt representation of this is the offside saying, "I'm glad I brought a bike on this hike." Consider the following a short meditation on the absurd, an IRL blog post on the liminal space where dumb ideas and hubris meet genius and glory, the space where creativity and imagination inspire or fool and betray the incautious. That is a rock. It's not holding a loaf of bread. That is a rock that he's trying to fix his rim on. And that was on the middle of the canal trail. If any of you ever ridden in Kernville, you're just kind of in the middle of this trail. To begin, what is the history of where absurd, foolhardy ideas come from? To concoct a route, one often starts with a map. On that topic, we could start by exploring the influence of the colonial gaze, the influence that the colonial gaze has informed cartography. There is undoubtedly much to be said about it. A favorite is depictions of the African continent, specifically its watersheds, as uteruses seducing the European explorer to penetrate its depths in search of the heart of darkness. Or in the Americas, blank spaces and maps filled by imagination and greed with fountains of youth or cities of gold. 7 cities of Cibola and El Dorado being great examples of this. Like gilded honeypots luring conquistadors to tragedy. The tragic expedition, oh my god, my fucking iPhone, sorry. There we go. It's telling me I'm talking too much. The tragic expeditions of Juan Ponce de Leon, Alvaro Niñez Cabeza de Vaca, and Hernando de Soto are great examples. If you don't know the story of Alvaro Niñez Cabeza de Vaca, he was part of a larger expedition that followed Juan Ponce de Leon's expedition in the early 1500s. Juan Ponce de Leon looking for the fountain of youth. Alvaro Niñez Cabeza de Vaca followed up several years later, found himself being attacked by indigenous people, and then his expedition, many of his men dying. Eventually they built rafts, kind of like at the panhandle of Florida, present day like Tallahassee, no, not Tallahassee, forget what city. It's drunk history right now, I've had 3 beers. Somewhere around there they built rafts and then sailed away, and then when they got to Galveston Bay, Florida, around there, Galveston Bay, Texas, a hurricane came in, destroyed their rafts, and out of the 400 men, about 4 of them actually survived. One of them being Alvaro Niñez Cabeza de Vaca, the other an African slave named Estebancito. Being the first enslaved person in the Americas, or rather in what's going to become the United States. Over the next 8 years, all 4 of them walked their asses all the way back to Mexico, to Spanish settlements. I want Netflix or HBO to make a TV show out of this guy. Like some of you out here on the West Side, write that script, make it happen. But
Wait, Q, why didn't they just go south? Just because they make that turn, it seems.
Have you ever been to Southern Texas?
No, I mean obviously there's reasons.
The desert.
Okay.
Yeah, to my understanding, the desert, and then they realize.
We're going west.
Yeah. Anyways, I digress, clearly. Even today, there is much to be said on the topic of the colonial gaze as it manifests itself in the language you use. Exploration, wilderness, Wild West, pioneers. Slide. However, for a moment, I will afford myself the privilege of beginning somewhere else. History can be many things, and most important of all, it is personal. Let me then practice history through its earliest form, oral history. As a small child, I would spend hours playing with the globe, holding it by the base, spinning it around, and letting my fingers randomly land on some faraway exotic location, like Ohio. This would happen. Or other times, I would walk my fingers across peninsulas and mountain ranges, often effortlessly jumping across oceans, only to then casually imagine a skateboard underfoot, and then doing a nose manual over the Andean Altiplano. I don't know if any of you guys have ever played this game. You're like, yeah. A favorite was using the flatness of the Pacific Ocean as a clean run-up to carve a hard-right Smith grind over the California coastal ranges of the Santa Lucia, Inez, and Monica Mountains. Seems like an absurd thing to do. A child playing an omnipotent being over a landscape that they have yet to know, and perhaps may never know, especially given my background, the 3rd son of immigrant parents raised in East Los Angeles. Or is it? In the off-reference 1975 essay, Aspects of the Downhill Slide, artist and photographer Craig Stasek is quoted as saying, Kyle, do you want to read this?
200 years of American technology has unwittingly created a massive cement playground of unlimited potential, but it was the minds of 11-year-olds that could see the potential.
It can be said that technology has democratized and compounded one's ability to interact with the environment, giving all of us an omnipotent imagination to redefine our world. We are all children with a digital globe on the palm of our hands. It has shrunk the world to a tablet screen size, yes, but in our case, created an avalanche of absurd ideas. Some of these ideas have an aesthetic beauty in their simplicity, a line across the horizon. Others so contrived and absurd, they lose the poetry of the endeavor. Recently, rock climber and reluctant runner Alex Honnold completed a traverse of most of the significant peaks of Red Rock Canyon, Nevada. When interviewed, he cast aspersions at uninspiring ultramarathon routes. Somebody at La Sportiva reached out about potentially like asking if I was interested in running Leadville. And I was like, oh, that would be interesting. So I looked it up and was like, wait, it's a 50-mile out and back? There's no way in hell that I would ever run 50 miles and then turn around and run it back. I was like, that sounds terrible, like terrible. And especially because it traverses all these incredible peaks. I could see doing 50-mile point to point where you summit all the peaks along the way, but I can't imagine doing all of that and then turning and going back. Like, who cares? Doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why anyone would sign up for a race where they do 50 miles one direction, then turn around and do the exact 50 miles going back. It's just going to be a worse version of what they just did. It's like they have this beautiful run in the mountains. It's beautiful and scenic and incredible. And then they turn around and do the same run in the dark when they hurt. It's like that doesn't make any sense. There's a quote. I can give you sources if you want to find this podcast where he says this. I will elaborate and add that it seems far too easy to be seduced by distance, locale, ease of parking, and 10% off coupons and swag bags to consider, is this the best use of the fitness you have achieved? Absurd. But despite these observations, there are beautiful transcendent routes that ask us to commune with the landscape we traverse. Locally, the Inman 300 comes to mind, a 218-mile, about the same length as the John Muir Trail, urban through hike that connects 344 public stairways and pedestrian-only walkways within Los Angeles.
Why?
Yeah, dude, it's sick. It, in many ways, forces one to redefine and potentially elevate the notion of the urban flaneur. Thanks, Kyle. With the explosion of absurd individual self-expressions, one can't help but ask, what purpose do they serve? Famously, French alpinist Lionel Terray titled his 1963 biography Conquistadors of the Useless, and many since then often point to the title as the best description of the farcical, absurd, useless nature of the physical pursuits mountain climbers, runners, cyclists, paddlers, etc. engage in. But do absurd, esoteric, often selfish pursuits matter? Are they indeed useless? In Marxist terminology, are they self-conceived and prescribed opiates of the self? Or are those that practice these pursuits a neo-variation of the lumpen proletariat, unpolitical, unorganized, disinterested in revolution? Their noses either too close to the grindstone to consider a better world, or too self-centered, obsessed with their own success, metric-centric, drunk on quantifiable data, too much a personification of summit fever, to consider solidarity and class consciousness. I'm reminded of an old apocryphal saying, often attributed to the famed Italian mountaineer Reinhold Messner, but possibly a play off of a Nepalese saying, the asshole that climbs up a mountain comes back an asshole. But I digress. In more poetic terms, can the proletariat daydream, flirt, be seduced by absurdity in its most playful and existential form, in sophisticated ways? On this topic, I am reminded of French philosopher Jacques Rancière, who, in his 1981 book titled Proletarian Nights, The Worker's Dream in 19th Century France, argued that as much as the French Revolution of 1830 was a rebellion against the hardships inherent in the death cult of capitalism, workers fought against the unyielding predetermination of their lives that did not afford the freedom to explore a world other than the one that is socially, economically prescribed to them, designed for them, mapped out. So it would appear that having the freedom to seduce the absurd may be essential for the dictatorship of the proletariat. In less political terms, rock climber and professor of philosophy at Utah Valley University, C-Thin Nguyen, in his 2017 essay, The Aesthetics of Rock Climbing, further develops the meaningfulness of the absurd. He argues that climbing is a game. We learn, among other things, that playing games involve taking up artificial goals and imposing insufficient means on ourselves because we want to create a new kind of activity. The point of basketball is not getting the ball through the hoop. That has no independent value in itself. If it did, we'd show up after hours to an empty court with a stepladder and pass the ball through to our heart's content. Rather, we take up the artificial goal, passing the ball through the hoop, and barriers to that goal, opponents, the dribbling rule, in order to create the activity of playing basketball. Now referring to rock climbing, he continues, the point is not to simply get to the top. After all, you could get to it by a helicopter. The point is to do it via a specific set of limited means. This is surely true of bouldering as well, a regular occurrence for boulders. We will be trying to climb up the hard overhung face, and a young child will run up the path on the backside of the rock and look down on us from above and gleefully and smugly inform us that we must have missed the easy way up. Lastly, he points out that the absurd physical pursuits we create and impose on ourselves are aesthetic, creative acts. The aesthetics of climbing is an aesthetics of the climber's own motion, an aesthetics of how the motion functions as a solution to a problem. There is for climbers a very special experience of harmony available, a harmony between one's own ability and the challenges they meet. In other words, it is art, essential. As for my absurdities, my art, my revolution, the following is a short, incomplete list of all the dumb shit that I've done. It's mostly a couple of the recent things. There's a lot of dumb stuff I've done. Here's a video of me trail running with my friend Steve Brizovich from Oakland, California. Me trail running from Yosemite Valley up the apron of Half Dome, and we were trying to find a way to like trail run / do some easy climbing, like 5, 7, maybe 5, 8, 9 moves. We brought a very short rope and like a half of a rack, a trad rack, and then got terribly off route. And if you know Half Dome and that, we ended up at the bottom of Half Dike, Snake Dike. But we had to push through a manzanita forest, up and then sideways as well for longer than I'd like to admit, all while wearing trail running shorts, by the way. We bailed, we made our way eventually down to the Mist Trail, and at the time it was called Curry Village. I think it's called Yosemite Village now. We were racing, thinking like, oh man, the pizza place is gonna stop serving pizza at like 7:30. So we're just sprinting, and we get there, and I guess they extended the hours till 10 p.m. Canyoneering with bicycles, sometimes it works out. Sometimes it works out. Other times it is not. In 2018, I looked to repeat a canyon in the Angeles Forest that, to my knowledge, had not. Oh my thing just. Yeah, it's good. We're good. To my knowledge, had not been repeated in about 10 years or so. I guess I could just talk about this. I was there. Yeah, this route hadn't been repeated in 10 years or so, and so over the course of something like 7 hours, we maybe went half a mile. At one point, it got easier to catapult our bikes in front of us. That is an S-Works, by the way. This is Ty Hathaway, who used to be sponsored by Specialized, and the guy in front is Cole Manis. For those of you that know the history of Rafa, he's one of the original like Rafa Brové guys, the bald guy with the mustache. We just got to the point where we were just throwing our bikes. It was easier to just like chuck our bikes ahead of us and then push on. Eventually we bailed when we were running out of daylight and went our way back up, and it became easier for us to go through a drainage ditch and disassemble our bikes to get it through like the debris like catch thing that like prevents big boulders from getting through. So these are just like 2 examples of the dumb stuff I've done recently. If you want to talk about absurd things that I've done in very recent past, most absurd thing I've done recently is have a kid. And she's already into doing her own stupid things. That is her dropping in on her first half pipe on a skate park in Frogtown in the east side. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, crack that one open.
Yeah. Thank you guys for making me use my brain on my vacation.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, guys. Well, thanks. Those were all wonderful. way better than my running scared bit. So I appreciate you guys bringing the level way up. We have a bunch of really smart, intelligent people out here that probably have run in their lives, or maybe cycled, or they just stumbled in off the street. But do you folks have any questions for any one of our panelists up here?
I have one for him.
Okay.
Okay, so was that the hottest temperature you've ever ran it? Is that why you go that way?
No, the hottest temperature I ran in was Western States that year. So it was a couple weeks later. It got up to, I think, 106.
Why was this run worse? Make you feel that way? Why do you think?
That's a great question. I mean, I felt really bad during Western States too. Yeah, man, I don't know. It's a great question. I'm not sure. Yeah. The cosmos.
Post-medial cortex, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
You already got that one out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great callback.
Yeah.
I wasn't tapered. I was going with heavy legs. I don't know.
Great question. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Anyone else? What shoe sizes are you guys? I mean, let's just talk about some running stuff. Yeah.
11.
11. Great.
Yeah.
Is that an average?
Seems like a bit above average. Yeah.
Average?
If I can speak to the layman, whatever is on sale or available at the REI in down the street, the one where you return stuff, you know what I'm talking about? The garage sale REI. There's a garage sale
Oh,
REI.
nice.
It's all that. So I'm
Wow.
burning my spot, but I've exclusively just bought shoes from there because I'm gonna burn through them anyway.
Well, you don't care about the size as long as it comes from that REI?
You just cut the front off if they're too small.
You know,
or
like they're
Brother
used,
Grimm
so
style.
yeah, they're used,
Yeah.
so they're gonna be a little bit bigger or blown out already. So yeah.
It's amazing. Okay, that's a good tip. We can bleep that out though in the post. Yes.
I got a question. I guess this is kind of a forum one, and I feel like maybe it's a little bit, I remember me and Moi had a talk about Western States a couple years ago. I
Sure.
don't know if you remember it. We were talking about Jim Walmsley and records and things like that, but I guess what's your relationship to these sanctioned long races compared to these kind of make your own crazy things that are wild, and where do you value them in that sense? And what do you think is more important for you guys personally?
It's a great question. I mean, I've definitely occupied both ends of that spectrum of racing a lot at races at UTMB and Western States and stuff like that, and making a living doing so. And I think for me, it's a cool opportunity. Those kind of high publicity, high visibility kind of events create the opportunity to do some other projects that are maybe not things that brands would care a whole lot about, but that make me super happy, and to then be here to connect with people like you guys and not really talk much about that racing, but to talk about the things that mean something else to me. So I see both as kind of two sides of a coin. The things that I've done, kind of the stories I've told, when no one's watching, is kind of this theme I think about a lot in my life. It's something my high school coach always used to say, it's about what you do when no one's watching. That the cultivation of a rich life of running pursuits that happen when no one's watching have made for better moments in races when it does matter to make the right move at the right time or to empty that last bit of yourself. They're kind of two sides of a coin. And then in turn, I think the racing allows me to draw more out of myself when I'm out there by myself, because in that setting where you have aid and crews and things like that, you are taking a lot more risks. But when I'm out on the JMT with a heavy pack, I'm nowhere near my max athletic potential in that moment. I have to be smart and stay way below that line because I have to take care of myself. But having those racing experiences allows me to wisely take more risks on my own.
Yeah.
No. Go for it.
That's kind of what it would take.
No. I was just gonna. I think to add or on what Adam is saying. That's Adam, everyone. Hi, Adam. It's kind of what the quote that I had there. Now that you have this fitness, what do you really want to do with it? And since y'all are professionals, you're constantly in a state of training and you have this fitness. And for me and my friends, we just call it afterwards, we call it tapering for the next month or for the next 2 years, and then tapering. But what do you do with that fitness for fun?
For fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think racing is fun. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what, I don't know, I think I come from a competitive running background. Like I ran, in college, and then tried to run, did the Olympic trial thing and everything, and then brought that into trail running. So it's like there's always been a huge performance aspect in running for me. I think that being said, in the last couple of years, I've definitely probably gotten, not like, I still love it, and like I want to drain myself in races and everything, but I think especially doing trail running, when you're out there and it's just like, oh, I just like want to kind of walk around for like 12 hours or whatever, it's like, I don't know if I need to hurt that bad. But then, I can still get really excited for races and everything. But, I don't know. I think as you get older, maybe you have a little more of a perspective on the things that like really matter. And I think while races and records and all that is like really cool, I think I'm starting to lean more towards like the experiences and just being outdoors and actually like maybe enjoying it, and not like suffering through it as much.
Do you think a company will ever sponsor you? So in cycling, again, we're in a cycling shop. I don't know how many people are cycling. EF, Education First, has is it called the All Tour?
Mm-hmm.
Lachlan Morden.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you know. He's a tour rider. He gets paid to do like esoteric
Right.
bike rides, like the Continental Divide or like
Mhm.
whatever he comes up with. Like I'm curious if the running, ultra running world will ever be like, you know what, you do your thing. And we're just gonna support the Stoke and the vibe.
Yeah, I could see that happening. It seems like Adam might know
Well,
an answer to that.
I feel like maybe I could preface this a little bit. I feel like, I've been around ultra running for about 10 years, and I'm kind of watching it split in a bit, where runners are starting to look more like NASCAR drivers when they line up.
Mhm.
We're getting Red Bull, and like, I think like what Dylan Bowman does with these things and like kind of centralizing it is great for like a professional level. But I'm also friends with like a Michael Versteeg and like
Sure.
these like crusty people who are trying to do this stuff. And I see it kind of going in a certain direction where different people are starting to value things and what's quantifiable and what's kind of that,
Marketable and
I guess a little bit more core,
Yeah.
Like, I guess like some of us from like even like a skating background is it's like what we're seeing, like skateboarding going to the Olympics are people who would never compete.
Right.
And they're just like badasses of mountains you may never have heard of.
Yeah.
So I guess that was partly a little bit what I was referring to as
Yeah.
well on like the current state of ultra running.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's an answer. It's
Yeah,
more
I don't know.
round table talk. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long one. I don't know if there's an answer. I think there's always going to be people that value like a Versteeg, right? Just someone who's like, still races, but more interested in just doing long trails and stuff like that. And there's going to be people that are hyper competitive. But I do think that there's a little Venn diagram. Well, it's actually probably pretty big of ultra trail runners that can occupy both of those spaces. And I think that's what makes the sport and the community pretty special.
Yeah, the last season I had was when I had my probably best racing season ever, and then ended it with doing lowest to highest. So I feel like both can exist even in the same period of time. It doesn't even need to be racing followed by letting go of that. I like to think of trying to hold both of those things and have both be kind of present in my pursuits of it.
Sure.
White hat and black hat.
Cool. Dan, do you guys have any absurd projects or Summerfest that you're excited about for the next year? 2024 is here.
I'm racing in 2 weeks, so that will be a Sufferfest. I'm doing a 100K in Arizona called the Black Canyon Trail. So that will maybe lead to a longer Sufferfest in the summer, which would be going back to Western States. So we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm just getting over a big kind of trauma injury in my knee and leg, so I feel like I'm in a space of just getting psyched for whatever I can. Biking to the big white ball I talked about in my story, anything like that becomes a super exciting outing right now. I do want to get back on lowest to highest, the route that I talked about, and then I also my background, kind of the John Muir Trail, which I alluded to earlier. I've done it. The first attempt I did was 8 years ago. The last one was 4 years ago, and it's a JMT year. It's like an Olympic cycle or something. It's been 4 years since my last one, so I like to dream that if I'd be healthy enough to get out there and go thrash around for a bit, I could.
Baby.
My kid is turning 2, and I'm teaching 5 classes. I'm a professor of history. That's my day job. I'm teaching 5 classes.
Wait, what, really?
Yeah, crazy. And I like every day I look at the door, someone's gonna come in and be like, "Excuse me, sir, can we talk to you?" I'm like, "Fuck, we found out." It's called imposter syndrome. Look at us. And through all that, I'm trying to finally, after 4 years of training and then things happening, including having a kid and COVID and all that other stuff, racing me walk 100.
Nice.
So that I can have fitness, that's what it is, so I can do this thing that I'm kind of concocting called the Cathedral Traverse. It's not like the Evolution Traverse, Peter Croft, if any of you are climbers and runners. It's like a shorter version of the Evolution Traverse where you do like Cathedral Peak, Tenaya Peak, and the Mathis Crest Trail. The Mathis Crest, like, yeah, Traverse. It's, all in a day, climbing, running,
Sweet.
all in a day. I'd likely to do that, but diapers.
Yeah, geographically, what would y'all prefer to like traverse or cross? Like take racing and all that out of it? Like what would you just want to do on your own?
I really love desert mountain ranges a lot. So like any of the ranges, like in Eastern California, Nevada, Arizona, like that terrain I really love. And I think it's something about like in general, there's pretty like stable weather patterns, like predictable, air and things like that. And I just can't get enough of it. And I think it's also because like the like kind of general population, if you will, is just like, this is a wasteland, there's nothing here. And I'm like, are you kidding? There's so much here. This is the coolest. So it's almost like the more general population, so to speak, like hates it, the more I'm like, let me at it. I just want to like get in there. So I really like desert ranges.
Yeah, I would probably say the same. Like the Southwest of the United States is probably like where my heart is. I'm from there. It's where all my interests are, I'd say, in terms of like landscapes that I find the most captivating. I think the one long trail that I would actually probably like to do would be the Arizona Trail. So doing that. I think those are the landscapes that I would say like inspire me more than, we've raced in the Alps, which are beautiful. I think a lot of, they're gorgeous, but I don't know. There's something more like mystical maybe about the Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah, same. I think at dinner we were
Yeah.
sharing this idea that if you go to Europe and you're doing an ultra, and never having been, but you were sharing, if you do an ultra, you really can race. But if you're in the States, you're running. And by that I mean, if you're doing UTMB, every 5 miles you're into another town where you could bail and have a baguette and some like French wine and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
But if you're running in parts of the Sandias, like you're from New Mexico, like you're not bailing.
Yeah.
Like it's, so it's just, it's like, we're running versus like I'm racing. It's a different mindset. So Southwest really affords and lends itself to that. And I think in, again, cycling shop, if I can bring it back a little bit to cycling, if you've ever bike packed or bike toured in the East Coast, or especially in the Northeast, which we have here, like it's like there's a Whole Foods, like not a Whole Foods, but there's like a Country Mart with like artisanal cheeses every
We
like
call them Yankee pantries.
Yankee pantries every 20. I didn't know that until I went. I was like, oh my god, like water caches. What is that? Yeah, but on the Southwest, it's like it's different. Yeah, it's just different, and so desert.
Anyone else?
As someone who used to kill a lot of time at my old job on Google Earth and mapping tools, daydreaming about fun projects and stuff. Like, can you guys talk a little bit about you kind of talked about like what's transpired on your ideas. Can you talk a little bit about like the process of coming up with the ideas, whether it's like you mentioned it, like using the grim as a training run, or like fast packing the JMT. Can you talk a little bit like about the process of building those projects out, how you plan for them too?
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts, like Cordis and I are always kind of conspiring a lot of kind of like, have you ever like poked around the map on this range or whatever? And I feel like we're often talking about like expanding our personal heat maps. So it's like kind of seeing like, oh, like I've done a lot here and I've loved it, and I've done a lot here and I loved it, but what about all this stuff in between? And even just like getting more excited about like unnamed routes. You know, like I know like a lot of the stuff I was talking about tonight was more like named stuff that's like a little easier to talk about. But there's a lot too that's just like doesn't make for as great of a story, but it's still like some really cool route that I could point to on a map, even if I couldn't name any of the peaks along it or whatever. So I think a lot of it starts from kind of like this idea of expanding the heat map, and then in general for like, I guess like you were also asking about like kind of like preparing and planning for a lot of that. I've tried to generally like throw myself in, like probably a little too early to stuff that's probably a little too big for me, and I've like used that as the way of learning for the next one. So I feel like there's never like a perfect time to kind of say like, all right, now's the time, I'm ready. I've tried to just be pretty opportunistic with like, if it's an area that requires a permit, like grab whatever permit you can. If it's, you have a certain number of days off of work and the weather's bad, like we're rallying and trying to just be opportunistic with it and realize it might not be perfect, but you'll learn a lot and the ball keeps rolling.
Yeah, I would say like one thing that I've tried to do, maybe out of necessity, but also just because I think it's interesting, is like keep it pretty local. I think there's so many, even when, you know, you feel like you've seen all the trails or roads or whatever there are to run in your backyard, like there's always stuff that you haven't seen. Maybe semi-private land, maybe, you know, there's a little, some light trespassing that might happen, but I think that's been really fun for me, is to try to just kind of exhaust yourself within, you know, your own neighborhood, and try to find a new trail or a new route or something. I love making loops, making routes. You know, I'm always on Strava following these little thin blue lines. And I think that was really fun with coming up this route in the Santa Monica's. I'm not from here, so I had never really run out there. And it just blew my mind when we did this route. And again, it is on some like pretty thinly blue lines that are not, the heat maps weren't great. But we just kind of trusted it and sent it, and it worked. And like, yeah, it just blew me away that you're less than an hour from Los Angeles, and we were up there today, and it was like, we were like, oh, this feels like you're in Europe, like in like Transgran Canaria or something. Yeah. It's just massive rock faces and beautiful lush greenery and rivers, and like, yeah, so you guys are blessed to be here, and I think just kind of learning what you can about how close you live to amazing things has been really, it's been fun for me.
There's a hashtag LA sucks for cycling.
Okay.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. As a historian, I say if you want to look to the future, look to the past. So often if I'm thinking of ideas, like what kind of dumb idea do I want to get into, I go into the archives and look at old guidebooks, yeah, I'm going to blow up the spot here. It's fine. There's a Caltech professor, California Technical College up in Pasadena. There's a Caltech professor that has done everything that you think you've done out in Los Angeles and beyond. Chris Brennan, I don't know if anyone knows it. Go online, look up Chris Brennan Adventures. He's got imagine like a GeoCities website. Have any of you ever been on like Ray Jardine's website? Ray Jardine kind of like invented ultralight backpacking and stuff like that, where it's just like one single web page, one single one, and if you click on like, oh, this will be a link to a different page, nope, it'll scroll you to the other part of it. It's like that. But if you look up Chris Brennan's website, he's done it all. And if you want to get even nerdier, go to Caltech's library, go to their, type in Chris Brennan, and it's all his geological studies, scientific ones, but hidden in there is a guidebook that he published in the 1990s that's out of print. That has all these ideas. A lot of it, the beta is just bad, right? But at least it inspires you. And for me, it's like, that's where it is. Yeah. Just like look at old maps, old things.
Totally.
Yeah. Chris Brennan.
Got a fun question. Gear. What are we rocking? What are we liking? What are we running in? All that.
We're contractually obligated to have a certain answer.
I'll talk shit.
Yeah, but so maybe someone that can choose. But yeah, Adidas' new graphic line is actually fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't recommend it enough. So yeah.
I really like Lecky trail running poles. Again, I would choose that even if I wasn't paid to say so. But I really like, they have like a hand harness, and it's cool because you can like unclip from them really easily, and then if you fall, you also don't like skin your hands open. I like that aspect as well. But I like using poles a lot, especially on really steep terrain.
I'm going to help you guys out. Adidas. Adidas bought 510 a couple years
Sure.
ago, and for a while, and they might still be doing it. They're putting sticky rubber on some of their shoes,
Yeah.
which is sticky rubber, like stealth rubber, which is like climbing rubber. So they're putting some of this stuff on their shoes. So if you're doing like multi-sport kind of things, like running to scramble and kind of stuff like that, the Adidas stuff is sometimes kind of good.
Nice.
The feeling, like, I mean, as you can see, I consume a lot of information, a lot of media, and like kind of like get a good like part of the zeitgeist of what's happening. It seems like, and I'm a strong supporter of this, of people creating shoes that can be resold. So if you're gonna get a shoe, get a shoe that can be resold. So meaning it has to have like a flat last, like the bottom has to be flat. They don't have to look like Vans, but they like, you know, if it's like kind of like a flat kind of thing, that means you can get it resold, and you can put a Vibram sole on it, or if the shoe company makes a resolable thing, you can do that, or you can like just do whatever. And then locally, I would say go to Valley Sole Repair. Locally, it's in Yucaipa, out by Joshua Tree. They used to be called. He had like a really bad like crackhead like resoling. It's like, dude, bro. But it's our friend Andy got us a pair of Las Putiva Mutants
Golich?
resold. Yeah, you know Golich.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Great.
Hi Andy. Yeah. He's in. He's probably in Bishop right now watching this. Yeah. Yeah, he got. He's super high right now. Got like them to resell a pair of his Mutants with stealth rubber. So.
Ran like 10 miles of them.
Yeah. My thing is, you know, be creative, be imaginative. Like, you push the boundaries and let them follow. Don't like buy, what's the Fugazi term? Never mind what they're selling, it's what you're buying. Yeah.
Love it.
I feel like also too on that note, like modifying stuff with like just doing some sewing yourself, or like using like materials from things that aren't working anymore can be like kind of fun. Like I feel like Cordis is better at messing around with some of that than I am, but we've tried to be like doing more of that because it is kind of just a cool way to develop your own personal preferences, and you can do like, especially if you're creatively inclined at all, it's also just like fun to have gear that you kind of customize for you.
I have a question for both of you. What's your next physical, I would say like, what limit are you wish you want to break? Physical limit. You have to think in mind. Distance, time, what is it?
That's a good question.
I just want to get. I love that question.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I think I'm trying to, like from this injury, like I'm trying to think not so much about just like getting back to where I was, but I'm trying to really think beyond that and trying to, look bigger. And for me, that means a lot of mindset stuff right now, and like working through a lot of fear and like self-confidence issues and things that have like come up as a result of this kind of freak injury, like having me down for so many months. So a lot of it is trying to work through some of that fear, my path ahead.
Yeah, I'd say like speed or like time. I think that's kind of the main thing that I've trained for most of the time. Like I feel like distance, I've done 100 miles a couple times. I feel like I could go further, like confident in that. But going faster, I think, is what right now is really intriguing to me, and probably what I'm training for with the most specificity.
And you've been ultra running for how long now?
4.5 years.
And how much time have you chipped away at your 100 mile time?
It's gotten slower because I've only ever run Western States, and I've done it twice. And the first year I ran it, 2019, great weather, great. I think the high was like 90 degrees, which is considered a cool year. And then in 2021, like I said, it was 106, and it was just an bloodbath. I got the same place both times, but I ran 90 minutes slower the second time. So it's all dependent on that. I've never run like a first speed 100, and I don't think I ever would. Yeah.
Is there stuff, like you were both kind of talking about, or I guess you guys were all talking about, like times you were alone and times you were with other people. Is there stuff that you like about being outdoors, like on these trails, by yourself versus like with another person? Like, can you talk about the experience of like those
Yeah.
two things?
I feel like I have just thought a lot about like being a female by myself in outdoor
Yeah.
spaces, and I feel like it's, I don't know, definitely feels like a privilege to be able to be in places where I can run outside and generally feel safe, but it doesn't mean I'm not ever like scared, and like definitely have run with pepper spray sometimes, and you just like, I don't know, feel like really conscious of whatever space you're in as a woman being outside by yourself. But I also feel like I've just become my best self and strongest self from like the act of defiance, so to speak, of trying to do that and be outside by myself. And it's the more I've done that in my life, the more like I don't know, it's taken me to some cool places, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I do really have a kind of strong relationship with myself and being outside by myself, and it's something I enjoy a lot, but it's not been without challenge. Like, I don't know, I just think a lot when I lived in LA, I would just run after work at night by myself, and I would just have, I don't even like have a headlamp or any, like a watch or any, like I just had like my phone light, and I would always fall on like the crooked sidewalks and smash my phone. I remember I'd like run by, like I distinctly remember once running by like a bar and seeing all my friends, and they're like, hey, and I was like all bloody with my broken phone, and they're like, you okay? I'm like, I'm good, I'll see you guys later. Like, and it just, I don't know, it's like kind of maybe goes back to some of the stuff we were talking to, like the countercultural element of running in these spaces. And I do think that like solo time outside is part of that. Like, it's not always like a fun social thing, and I think it like has taught me to be like present with myself too, and like you just, I don't know, as we all like know here, like you just sort so much out in your own head, whether it's just going for a walk or being outside by yourself. It's a cool thing. It's a rambling answer, but lots of things.
If I can
combined.
jump in on
Yeah.
that, it is interesting. It all kind of depends on where I'm running. It like affords me, if I'm doing Elysian Park, which I run all the time, it like affords me like freedom of mind and thought, truly feel free and blah blah blah. Especially if I'm running really early in the morning. What is it? Carson McCullers, The Heart of the Lonely Hunter.
Yeah.
Anyone? High school.
Yeah.
There's a really great quote in that book where the author, she sees something like, if you run early enough, you run into this weird kind of like Venn diagram of people that are up late from drinking the night before to versus people that are up early getting ready to work. And there's like this moment in between, this liminal moment where you're free. So if I'm in the area, that's how I feel all the time. If I'm in other parts of the country, I become very aware of the color of my skin, you know, especially if I'm like on a bike ride or a route where there's like private property, right? And you know, what it might mean for someone to, oh, sorry, I didn't know, versus, you know, it gets a little complicado, you know, a little complicated. So it all kind of like depends on where you are. Like, if I'm at home, I'm free. If maybe on other parts, I may not always be free. Or you may not always feel, dangerous, in a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. Good question.
One more. It's typical for runners to lose their passion and drive when it comes to running. What keeps you guys going?
Yeah.
Are you being chased by a mountain lion,
Yeah.
or are you chasing the mountain lion?
I mean, yeah, it's very internal for me. Like, I think I would train. I look to my dad a lot. He's someone that he got me into running, I feel like, and he still runs, you know, every single day, and like even races. You know, he's 65 years old and he's still trying to break 20 minutes in the 5K, man. Yeah, he's trying his best. So yeah, I think though, like, I don't know, it's very internal. Like, I'll do it when no one's watching, you know. I mean, I think I'll do it for the rest of my life, and I think that's probably why you kind of have to like fall in love with it, and luckily I have. And yeah, I don't know, I guess that's just what keeps me going. Like, I think during COVID even, that was like a great time to train, because you didn't have to worry about races. But then it also just like, yeah, I think for a lot of people it was like, oh shit, I have nothing to look forward to. Like, I have no reason to train. And then for some people it's like, sweet, like I don't have to train, or I mean, I don't have to race, I can just train. And I think that like really clicked with me, and that was actually I mean, it was a bad time, but it's kind of nice.
I guess for me, just like a continued lifelong love of it. Like I started when I was a kid, and then like ran through like school programs and stuff. And I feel like there's always this like I don't know, moment after you like that's over, and you're like, all right, no practice today, no coach watching you. Like, what are you gonna do? And it's like, well, I'm gonna go for a run the next day, and like I do feel like kind of back to that like relationship with the self thing. Like it had to be like fully something I wanted to do before it was like gonna stick in a more meaningful way. Like without that structure, like the fact that I was just still wanted to do it, is like when it kind of created a new meaning and just like allowed my love of it to keep me going.
I just have a rambling answer that I'm not gonna impose on everyone. It's just like, yeah.
You should like
You
it.
should.
I just.
I think you should try. And
Yeah, okay.
we'll,
Yeah, give it a try.
Yeah, I just, what else are you gonna do? I
Yeah.
think at dinner we were
Yeah.
there was a pre-meeting to this.
yeah.
You were talking about if you didn't have anything to do, like
Uh-huh.
you would just run on the treadmill,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
would just like run around in circles in,
Yeah.
in a parking lot. Like,
Yeah.
'cause what else are you gonna do?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like asking a fish to describe water.
Uh-huh.
It's just like it's just all around,
Yeah.
right? It just becomes so ingrained and part of your life that you just like don't know the trees for the forest.
Yeah.
Rambling, but I think
No.
I hit some stuff.
It's like the carrot becomes the hand pushing you eventually.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, great.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone. Let's have a round.